Welcome to this deep dive. If you are tuning in right now, I know exactly who you are because you are our absolute favorite kind of person. You are the learner.
That's right.
You are that insanely curious individual who is always looking to level up. You're always trying to figure out the hidden mechanics of how the world actually works.
Mm.
And you're constantly hunting for those beautiful aha moments, but, without wanting to drown in a sea of information overload.
Which is so easy to do these days.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we know your time is incredibly valuable, whether you're listening on your commute or maybe prepping for a massive team meeting or just going for a walk to clear your head. Today, I promise you, we have an exploration that is going to fundamentally shift the way you look at leadership,
Absolutely.
the way you look at mentorship, and honestly, the way you look at your own daily struggles and your personal growth. We're unpacking a concept today that, I have to admit, it sounds almost mystical when you first hear the name. We're talking about the Talent Whisperer.
It does sound like something out of a fantasy novel, doesn't it?
Right.
Like this person who just magically knows how to unlock human potential. But our mission today, for you, the listener, is to completely deconstruct that magic.
Right.
We are going to break down human transformation. We're going to explore exactly how top-tier guides, these individuals we were referring to as talent whisperers, actually operate to bring out greatness in others.
And it's not magic.
No, the most important thing to understand right off the bat is that it is not magic at all. It is a highly attuned, deeply practiced, and frankly, biologically grounded set of skills.
Yeah.
Today, you're going to learn how they do it and, crucially, how you can begin to cultivate these exact same skills in your own life.
I am so ready for this because when I first started looking at all the notes and the research we gathered for this deep dive, I was a little skeptical.
Which is fair.
Yeah, but just to give you, the listener, a quick sense of the territory we are covering today, we are going to be synthesizing a massive stack of material.
A really diverse stat, too.
Exactly. We are looking at the actual neuroscience behind what some people loosely call manifestation. We're digging into iterative learning loops, specifically things like Daniel Coyle's concept of the talent code.
Which is brilliant.
So good. And we were going all the way down into the profound psychological depths of the 5 Whys methodology.
And the reason this matters to you right now, today, is that the world is moving faster than ever.
Yeah, it's spinning out of control sometimes.
It really feels that way. And the old models of, command and control leadership or even just white-knuckling your way through your own career, they are breaking down. They just don't work anymore.
Right.
Whether you are stepping into a new management role or trying to coach a friend who's going through a terrible transition or just navigating your own evolution, the tools we are going to unpack today are designed to become your new compass.
The completely new way of navigating.
Exactly. You're going to learn how to recognize the hidden emotional currents in a room, how to find the absolute root meaning behind why people do what they do, and how to use that knowledge to cultivate an environment where you and the people around you don't just survive the chaos, but actually thrive in it.
Let's get right into the identity of this so-called talent whisperer then. When we look at the material, they are often described as having this unseen hand.
Yes, the unseen hand.
Meaning they don't force things, they guide them. But the very first attribute that came up, and this is where my skepticism really flared up initially, is this concept of clairsentience.
Right, clairsentience.
Now, I have to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
When I read the word clairsentience,
Yeah.
my brain immediately went to crystal balls, velvet tents at a carnival. Psychics predicting the future.
Yeah, the tarot card reading vibe.
Exactly. It sounds like corporate woo-woo. Is this just a fancy, mystical-sounding rebrand for having basic empathy, or is there actual science here?
I completely understand the skepticism. The word carries a ton of esoteric baggage. But if we strip away the mystical connotations and just look at the root of the word, clairsentience literally just translates to clear feeling.
Clear feeling.
Yes, it is not supernatural in the slightest. It is a profound biological and psychological capacity to read the unspoken emotional currents and the physical signals that precede language.
Okay, so it's biological.
Deeply biological. Think about human evolution. For millions of years before we had complex spoken language, how did we communicate?
Grunts and gestures, I guess.
Well, yes, but even before that, how did we know if someone in our tribe was a threat, or if they were terrified, or if they were injured? We read their nervous system.
Oh, wow. We read their body language, their tension.
Much more than just basic body language, though. We sensed the entire field of interaction. A talent whisperer is someone who has actively rehabilitated and honed this ancient human ability.
So they're tapping into something we all actually have.
Exactly. They notice the subtle shifts in a person's breathing pattern. They notice the microtension in the jaw or the shoulders. They notice the proximity, like how a person physically takes up space in a room.
Right.
The timing of their pauses, the exact tone and cadence of their voice before the actual meaning of the words is even processed by the brain.
So how's that different from empathy?
Good question. Basic empathy might be feeling sad when someone else is crying. Clairsentience is walking into a room and feeling the density of the anxiety before anyone has even looked up from their laptops.
When I was going through the notes, the analogy that really made this click for me was the comparison to a horse whisperer.
Oh, that is a perfect analogy.
Because you think about how a horse whisperer operates. They don't walk into a dusty corral with a wild, terrified Mustang and start shouting verbal commands.
No, that would just panic the horse more.
Exactly. They don't try to force the horse into submission with a whip or heavy rope. Instead, they just stand there and they listen. But they aren't listening with their ears. They are listening to the horse's nervous system.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The horse whisperer is reading the posture, the twitch of the ears, the energy of the animal long before a sound is made.
Right.
They recognize a fundamental truth. The horse isn't being stubborn. The horse is reacting to a perceived threat. Its nervous system is in overdrive. And the talent whisperer does the exact same thing with human beings.
So the whisperer realizes, hey, this employee who is being incredibly defensive and aggressive in this meeting isn't just a bad apple. Their nervous system is reacting to something.
Precisely. And that realization fundamentally changes the nature of the intervention. A traditional manager or traditional consultant operates under the assumption that their job is to hand you a fish.
Here's the solution. Here's the new workflow. Go execute it.
Yes. But a talent whisperer is a guide whose entire purpose is to help you learn how to fish. They do not chase immediate outcomes or short-term performance metrics because they know that forced compliance just doesn't last.
It never does. People just revert back.
Exactly. Their goal is cultivating the conditions for growth. The sources use this phrase, they want to leave ripples, not footprints.
Leave ripples, not footprints. I absolutely love that.
They recognize that true influence is about setting an environment where the other person's nervous system finally feels safe enough to drop the armor, release the defensiveness, and step into their own potential.
But as I was reading about this intense emotional attunement, this clairsentience, I immediately thought of a massive pitfall. And the material actually calls this out specifically as the misreading trap.
Oh, yes. The misreading trap.
I think anyone who considers themselves a highly empathetic person or a highly sensitive person falls into this trap constantly. I know I do.
It is the most common occupational hazard of being highly attuned to others. This brings up a vital distinction between perception and interpretation.
Walk us through that.
Let's break it down. Clairsentients, or people with highly developed emotional antenna, are usually incredibly accurate at the perception stage. They can accurately feel an emotion in a room.
Like they walk in and just know something is off.
Right. They walk into a meeting and physically feel there's a massive amount of tension here. Or they sit down next to a colleague and sense this person is radiating anxiety. That raw physical sensation is real, and it is almost always accurate.
But the
Trap snaps shut in the very next microsecond.
when the brain gets involved.
Exactly. The human mind hates unresolved feelings. It cannot stand a vacuum of meaning. So the moment you feel that tension or anxiety, your mind frantically tries to assign a story to it to make sense of the sensation.
Right?
And because our brains are wired with a negativity bias for survival, the story is usually about us.
Oh, this is so real. I have to share a somewhat embarrassing story about exactly this, just to ground it for the listener.
Please do.
So last week I was having a one-on-one meeting with a colleague. We were discussing a project I had been leading. And about 10 minutes in, I felt it. The energy just shifted.
You perceive the change?
Yes. They started sighing loudly. Their shoulders were slumped. They were giving these really short, clipped answers to my questions. My emotional antennae were blaring. Danger, frustration, anger. That was the perception.
Which was completely accurate. You sensed the distress.
Right. But then the misreading trap happened. My brain immediately supplied the narrative. They hate my project. They think my presentation was garbage. They are mad at me because I sent that email too late last night.
Oh, the classic
A total spiral.
Yeah.
For the next 45 minutes of that meeting, I was sweating. I was backpedaling, I was overly apologetic, I completely derailed the agenda trying to appease them.
Because you were reacting to your own story, not their actual reality.
Exactly. Finally, at the end of the meeting, I couldn't take it anymore, and I just asked if they were upset with my work. And you know what it was?
Something completely unrelated, I imagine.
Their dog was sick.
Oh, no.
Yes. They had been up all night at the emergency vet with their poodle. They were exhausted, terrified for their pet, and completely distracted. I had spent 45 minutes of my life having a full-blown anxiety attack over a sick poodle that I didn't even know existed. I accurately felt the emotion, the distress, but I completely, wildly misread the source.
That is the absolute perfect illustration of the misreading trap. You felt the distress, but your mind invented a story that placed you at the center of it.
It's so egocentric when you think about it.
It is, but it's a biological defense mechanism. The mastery of a talent whisperer lies in their disciplined ability to separate that raw physical sensation from the story the ego invents.
So how does a whisperer handle that exact sick poodle scenario?
When a whisperer sits in that meeting and feels the sighing and the clipped answers, they sense the distress, but instead of reacting to an internal narrative of, they hate my project, they get curious.
They pause.
They use that nonverbal attunement to gently pause and explore what's actually happening. They might just stop the agenda and say, hey, I'm sensing a lot of heavy energy right now. Is everything okay?
They don't accuse.
No, they don't accuse, they don't assume, they just hold up a mirror.
But let me ask you a practical question for the listener right now. Because a lot of people are listening to this thinking, okay, that's great in a physical room. But if you are managing a remote team, or you do most of your coaching over video calls, this nonverbal attunement feels incredibly difficult.
It is definitely a different skill set.
Right. How does a whisperer read the room when the room is just a grid of faces on a screen and half of them have their cameras off?
It is undeniably harder, but the principles of the field of interaction still apply. You just have to tune your antenna to different frequencies.
What does that look like on a Zoom call?
On a video call, a whisperer isn't just looking at facial expressions. They are listening to the pacing of the conversation. Who is suddenly dominating the chat? Who hasn't spoken in 20 minutes?
That's a huge tell.
Huge. When you ask a difficult question, is there a 3-second delay before anyone unmutes? And what is the quality of that silence? Is it a thoughtful silence or a fearful silence?
You can totally feel the difference between those two silences, even digitally.
Absolutely. They listen to the tone of voice, the heavy sighs, the nervous laughter. Even with cameras off, the energy of a group still transmits through the cadence of how they interact. It requires deeper focus, but the clairsentience still functions perfectly well.
That makes a lot of sense. You're reading the negative space of the conversation. Now, to take this concept of reading physical tension even further, the source material brings in this incredibly fascinating physical modality to serve as an analogy.
Oh, the contact CARE material.
Yes, contact CARE, spelled out as an acronym, which was developed by a practitioner named Dale Speedy.
This is one of the most compelling parallels in the research, honestly. Contact CARE is a physical therapy modality, but it operates on a philosophy that perfectly mirrors the psychological work of a talent whisperer.
How so?
Well, in traditional physical therapy, or say chiropractic work, if you have a misaligned bone or a tight muscle, the practitioner often uses force. They manipulate, they push, they crack, they massage aggressively to force the tissue back into place.
Which hurts. I've been there, you leave feeling bruised.
It often does hurt. But contact CARE takes a completely different approach. Practitioners of this modality are looking for something that Speedy calls skeletal sensory shock, or what he brilliantly terms flinch locks.
Flinch locks. I am obsessed with that word. It perfectly describes a feeling we all know.
It is incredibly descriptive. A flinch lock, in this physical sense, is a bone-deep contraction triggered by a surprise impact or trauma.
Give us an example of how that happens physically.
Imagine you are walking down the street and you unexpectedly step into a pothole. Your body violently contracts to protect your joints. It locks into a defensive posture.
Like a massive flinch.
Exactly. The problem is sometimes the nervous system doesn't realize the danger has passed once you step out of the pothole. And the body holds that microscopic tension, that flinch lock, for years.
Years, just from a pothole.
Yes, it changes your gait, it causes chronic pain. The body essentially forgets how to relax that specific area because it still thinks it's under threat.
So how does the practitioner fix it if they aren't aggressively massaging it out or cracking the back?
That's the magic of it. They don't use force. When the practitioner locates the flinch lock, they don't push against it. Instead, They provide a precise, still presence.
What does that mean physically?
They gently match the pressure of the contraction, essentially supporting the bone in its exact locked position. They don't try to pull it straight. They hold a perfectly safe, unthreatening space around the injury.
So they just hold it there.
They just hold it. And when the nervous system finally registers that it is supported and safe, the body releases the lock on its own. It self-corrects.
That is wild.
The practitioner didn't fix the body. The practitioner created the environment for the body to fix itself.
And here is where it gets incredibly profound for our listeners, because the material connects this physical phenomenon directly to psychological flinch locks.
Yes, the exact same mechanism happens in the mind.
Right, because human beings carry around these internalized reactions to past emotional harm, past judgments, past failures, toxic bosses from 5 years ago. We lock up emotionally.
We absolutely do. We develop psychological flinch locks. We flinch when a certain type of feedback is given. We lock up when we are asked to present in front of leadership. We contract when we feel our autonomy is threatened.
And a traditional manager, much like a traditional chiropractor, might try to force the employee through it.
They just apply pressure.
Right. They might say, toughen up, or leave your baggage at the door. Or they just give them a rigid new performance plan to force compliance. They are trying to crack the emotional bone back into place.
Which almost never works long term.
No. But the Talent Whisperer, they recognize the psychological flinch lock, and they don't force it. They don't attack the defense mechanism.
Because attacking a defense mechanism only makes it stronger. If someone is defensive and you tell them they are being defensive, they will literally defend their defensiveness.
Exactly. It's a losing battle.
The Whisperer does exactly what the contact CARE practitioner does. They just hold a safe, still, non-judgmental space. They act as a calm mirror. They acknowledge the tension without trying to solve it immediately.
They just support the emotional bone where it is.
Yes. They allow the person's nervous system to recognize that they are not under attack in this new environment. And in that space of profound safety, the person begins to untangle their own knots. They self-correct. It is the ultimate act of leading by leaning out.
Leading by leaning out. That is a massive paradigm shift. But okay, let's play this out practically. You are the whisperer. You have sensed the tension. You have avoided the misreading trap.
Right.
You have created a safe space, and the person is starting to let their guard down. The flinch lock is finally loosening. But to actually help them release it fully, you need a tool.
You do.
You need a way to get past the surface symptoms, the anger, the procrastination, the defensiveness, and get down to the actual root of why the tension is there in the first place. You need a diagnostic tool.
And that brings us to what is arguably the most powerful diagnostic tool in the Whisperer's arsenal. It is time to talk about the 5 whys.
Yes. Let's transition into unearthing the core why, moving from root cause to root meaning. Now, if you are listening and you have spent any time in business, project management, or engineering, you have almost certainly heard of the 5 whys.
It's a very famous framework.
It traces all the way back to Sakichi Toyota on the Toyota factory floor in the early 20th century.
It was originally designed as an industrial troubleshooting tool.
Right. A machine would break down on the assembly line. And instead of just letting a mechanic look at it and say, oh, the drive belt snapped, let's put a new belt on, Toyota insisted they ask, why 5 times?
To get past the obvious symptom.
Exactly. Why did the belt break? Because it was worn out. Why was it worn out prematurely? Because the gears were misaligned. Why were the gears misaligned? Because the mounting bracket was loose. Why was it loose? Because the vibration of the floor loosened the bolts.
They drilled all the way down.
They would drill down until they found the absolute root mechanical failure, the vibrating floor, so they could fix the actual problem, not just slap a Band-Aid on the symptom.
It is brilliant in its simplicity for mechanical systems. But what is truly fascinating here is the massive paradigm shift the Talent Whisperer applies to this exact same tool.
How do they shift it?
They take the 5 whys and they completely reinvent its purpose. They move it from being a mechanical tool, which is entirely about fixing what is broken, and elevate it into a deeply human tool for profound psychological awareness.
Because humans are not broken machines on an assembly line.
Precisely. If you treat a human being like a broken machine that needs fixing, you immediately trigger their saboteurs. You trigger shame and defensiveness.
People hate feeling like a problem to be solved.
They do. The whisperer shifts the five whys from a paradigm of fixing to a paradigm of seeing. It is no longer about finding the broken gear. It is about seeing what is crying out to be understood within the person.
That's beautiful.
Human systems, whether we're talking about a marriage, a corporate team, or an individual's own psyche, rarely fail for purely mechanical reasons. They don't break down because of a missing spreadsheet. They fracture at the level of meaning.
The level of meaning.
Yes. They break down when what we deeply value and what we are currently doing fall out of alignment.
So the whisperer uses the 5 whys to excavate what the research calls the causal chain. And we really need to slow down and unpack this causal chain, because when I read this, it completely changed how I view human behavior.
It is a powerful framework.
It's layered. It moves from symptom to condition to pattern to belief and finally to value or need.
Let's walk through that chain step by step, because it really is the anatomy of human motivation. The first why usually reveals the symptom.
This is what just happened.
Right. The missed deadline, the snap temper, the late arrival, it is surface level.
Okay, then the second one.
The second why drops down a layer and clarifies the condition. What was the environment or context that allowed this symptom to occur? So I missed the deadline because I was given 3 competing projects.
It still feels like making an excuse, honestly.
It often is, which is why you have to keep going. The third why exposes the pattern. This is where it gets uncomfortable. How often are we doing this? Oh, I always say yes to competing projects and end up burning out.
Now we are getting somewhere.
Then the fourth why surfaces the belief. This is the invisible story we are telling ourselves that keeps the pattern running. I believe that if I say no, I am not a team player and I will be fired.
Wow. And then the 5th why.
The fifth why almost always arrives at the bedrock. A core value or a deeply held human need. I have a profound need for security and belonging, and I am terrified of being an outcast.
And what the text makes so clear is that this root why, this deep need for belonging or autonomy or mastery, isn't just an origin point. It is an organizing principle.
That is the crux of the entire philosophy right there. The root is the source code of the human being, and that organizing principle flows upward through the chain.
It builds the whole structure.
Yes, your root need dictates your values, which shape your beliefs, which drive your patterns, which determine your behaviors, which result in your outcomes.
So if a manager just tries to put you on a performance improvement plan to change the outcome, the symptom, they are basically fighting gravity.
They are hacking at the leaves while ignoring the roots. It requires immense energy to force a behavior change that contradicts a core belief.
It's exhausting.
It is. But when a whisperer helps you use the 5 whys to reach down and bring awareness to that root meaning, the entire chain reorganizes itself effortlessly.
How so?
Once you realize you are overworking because of a fear of not belonging, you can address the fear directly. You can find healthier ways to secure your belonging, and the overworking symptom naturally resolved itself.
But let's be real with the listener for a second. Doing this psychological excavation is incredibly difficult because you don't just sit down, ask yourself why 5 times, and calmly arrive at enlightenment.
No, absolutely not.
You have voices in your head actively fighting you the whole way down. The sources talk about this internal battle between what they call saboteurs and allies.
Yes, the journey down the causal chain is actively resisted by the ego. As you ask yourself, or the person you are guiding, these deep why questions, the saboteurs wake up.
The inner critics.
Exactly. These are our defensive mechanisms. They push fear, avoidance, control, and judgment. Their entire job is to protect the fragile ego from the pain of self-awareness.
So when you ask the first why, the saboteur jumps in and gives you a really shallow defensive answer.
Yeah.
Like, why did I yell at the meeting? Because that guy is an idiot. Or why did I quit? Because this company is stupid.
Exactly. The mind defends, but the heart reveals. The saboteurs are trying to keep you safe by keeping you shallow. If you let the saboteur win at why number 2, the flinch lock stays locked.
I think we need to actually show this to the listener. Let's role play this for a second, because reading about the 5 whys makes it look so clean, like a textbook exercise.
But in reality, it is incredibly messy.
Super messy. Let me be a difficult defensive employee. I'll be the saboteur voice, and you be the talent whisperer. Let's say I'm a senior developer, and I just completely blew up at a junior colleague in front of the whole team during a code review.
Okay, let's do it. I'll create that safe, non-judgmental space. I would start by observing the symptom without accusation. Hey, I noticed things got really heated in the review today. Why do you think the frustration boiled over?
Because he doesn't know what he's doing. I've showed him the formatting guidelines 3 times, and he still writes sloppy code. It's wasting my time.
I hear that it feels like a waste of time. Why does his formatting specifically cause such an intense reaction for you?
Because it breaks the build. If the code is sloppy, the whole architecture gets unstable. Someone has to care about quality around here.
It sounds like you care deeply about the stability of the project. Why is carrying that responsibility for the whole architecture feeling so heavy for you right now?
Because I'm the only one who checks it. Every time we ship, I'm the one staying up until 2 a.m. fixing everyone's mistakes so the client doesn't yell at us.
That sounds incredibly exhausting. Why do you believe you have to be the one to stay up until 2 a.m. to fix it?
Because if the client is unhappy, the project fails. And if the project fails, it's my name on the line. I'm the senior lead. It's my fault.
And why does the fear of that failure feel so personal to you?
Wow. Because I tie my entire self-worth to my competence. If I'm not the infallible expert, I don't feel like I have any value to this team.
And scene. That is the 5 whys in action. Do you see what just happened?
That was intense.
We started with a symptom, yelling at a junior developer about code formatting. The saboteur tried to make it about the other guy being an idiot.
Right, projecting the blame outward.
But by persisting with compassionate, disciplined curiosity, we bypassed the saboteur. We awoke the ally voice, the voice of vulnerability and truth, and we found the root, a profound fear of worthlessness tied to competence.
That is so powerful. It completely shifts the perspective. Because if you just punished me for yelling, I would still be terrified of failure. I would still stay up until 2 a.m. and the flinch lock remains.
You'd just be a terrified, angry person who is better at hiding it.
Exactly. But now we can actually talk about how to separate my self-worth from the code and how to delegate safely.
Exactly. You change the root, the whole chain reorganizes.
To give the listener a couple more concrete examples, I want to share 2 brilliant scenarios from the source material that perfectly illustrate how this works in totally different contexts. The first is what they call the bridge request.
Oh, I love this one.
Imagine an engineer is asked by a city council, why do we need to build a bridge? The first answer is purely practical, to cross the river. Why cross the river? To connect the 2 towns on either side. Why connect the towns? To improve trade and mobility between the populations.
Keeping going down the chain.
Why improve mobility? To lower housing costs and give people access to better, higher-paying jobs. Why does that matter?
And suddenly you are past concrete, steel, and traffic logistics. By the 5th why, you realize the bridge is actually about the deep human pattern of sustaining connection, creating opportunity, and fostering societal trust.
It completely changes the meaning of the work. If you are a construction worker pouring concrete and you think you are just building a road over water, it's just a job.
A grueling job.
But if you realize you're building a lifeline for economic opportunity and human connection, it becomes a calling.
It connects the daily grind directly to the root meaning.
And the second example from the text is even more relatable for everyday life. Noise-canceling headphones.
Yes, the headphones.
Think about this. Why do you buy a pair of $300 noise-canceling headphones? First why? To block out sound. Why block out sound? To focus on my work. Why do you need to focus? Because the open plan office is too chaotic and people keep interrupting me?
We've all been there.
Why does the chaos bother you so much? Because I feel like I have absolutely no control over my own schedule or my day. Why do you need control?
And there it is again. By the 5th why, you realize that buying headphones isn't about audio technology, bass response, or Bluetooth connectivity at all.
Not at all.
It is about a profound, desperate human need for mental sovereignty, agency, and peace in an overwhelming world. The headphone is just a physical symptom of a deeper search for autonomy.
Okay, so let's synthesize this for you, the learner, listening right now. Once you, or the person you are coaching, have used this compassionate curiosity to battle through the saboteurs and uncover this root meaning, this core, what do you actually do with it?
Right, what's the next step?
You can't just write it in a journal and sit on it like a philosopher on a mountain.
No, absolutely not. Insight without action is just expensive trivia. Once you uncover that root, meaning you do not sit on it, you use it, it becomes your continuous compass.
A compass for what?
For navigating what's coming next. Because the Talent Whisperer is about to guide you out of the safe harbor and into a very turbulent, unpredictable space. They are going to take you to what systems theorists call the edge of chaos.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 3. The compass and the crucible, iterative learning at the edge of chaos. Now, I have to say, the term edge of chaos sounds absolutely terrifying. Sounds like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute.
It sounds intimidating, I know. but it is a highly specific, highly productive state. In complex systems theory, the edge of chaos is defined as the dynamic threshold between rigid stability and total disorder.
Okay, so it's a middle ground.
Think of it as a spectrum. If you stay on the far left, in pure stability, nothing changes. It is safe, but it is stagnant. You atrophy.
Right. Get bored.
Right. But if you go to the far right into pure disorder, you experience panic, trauma, and structural collapse. The edge of chaos is that precise sweet spot of disequilibrium right in the middle.
The Goldilocks zone.
Exactly. It is where you are stretched just enough to grow, where novelty occurs, where innovation and deep learning thrive. This is exactly where the talent whisperer must guide their protege.
But to survive in that zone, without panicking and running back to the comfort zone, you need a mechanism. The sources call this learned resilience, and they outline this incredibly practical framework for navigating the edge of chaos called the THRIVE loop, T-H-R-I-V-E.
The three-rive loop.
It stands for tackle, hypothesize, reach, inspect, value, energize.
It is a brilliant, structured mechanism for taking action when you don't know the final outcome. But before we map the three thrive loops step by step, we really need to address the engine that drives a person to even step into the loop in the first place.
The motivation to jump into the chaos.
Yes, we need to talk about learned manifestation.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about manifestation, because again, this is a word that has been completely hijacked by pop culture and social media to mean what the sources call magical thinking.
Right, The Secret, vision boards, all of that.
You know the vibe. The idea that if I just sit on my couch, close my eyes, and think really, really positive thoughts about a red Ferrari, the universe will magically vibrate and deliver a Ferrari to my driveway. I am naturally highly skeptical of this.
As you should be. But the sources completely dismantle the woo-woo version of this.
They really do. And they replace it with something much more empowering, which is neuroscience and biology.
They actively contrast magical thinking with learned manifestation. And the entire concept centers on a physical structure in your brain called the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
Okay, let's unpack the RAS for the listener. What is this biological hardware actually doing?
The RAS is a finger-sized bundle of nerves located at the base of your brain, right at the brainstem. Its primary function is to act as a massive, ruthless filter for your conscious mind.
A filter for what?
For sensory data, every single second, your brain is bombarded with millions of bits of data. Every sound in the room, every color you can see, every feeling of clothing on your skin, the temperature.
It's a staggering amount of information.
If your conscious mind had to process all of that data simultaneously, you would go instantly insane. You would literally short circuit.
So the RAS protects us.
Yes. The RAS filters out 99% of the noise and only lets through the tiny fraction of data that it deems important to your immediate survival or to your actively stated goals.
This is the classic red car phenomenon.
Exactly, the red car.
It's like when you finally decide you want to buy a specific red car. You've never noticed them before in your life.
Yeah.
But the day you make the decision to buy one, suddenly you see that exact red car everywhere you go.
At every stoplight, in every parking lot.
The cars didn't magically teleport into your reality. Your RAS simply stopped filtering them out.
Precisely. The cars were always there. Your reality didn't change, your filter changed. So learned manifestation isn't magic. It is intentional biological programming.
Programming the RAS.
When you do the deep, difficult 5 whys work we just discussed, and you get absolute, undeniable clarity on your core, why your compass, you are essentially programming your RAS. You are telling your biological hardware, this root value is what matters most to me.
And then the magic happens.
Except it's not magic, it's perception. Suddenly, you start spotting opportunities, resources, conversations, and connections in your environment that align with that root why.
Because you told your brain to look for them.
Yes. These opportunities were already there, circulating around you for years, but they were previously invisible to you because your filter was blocking them out as irrelevant noise. Learned manifestation is just the act of tuning your biological search engine to spot the materials you need to build your vision.
That is so incredibly empowering. You aren't sitting around passively waiting for the universe to magically rearrange itself to suit your desires. You are upgrading your own internal hardware to navigate the reality that already exists.
You take control of the filter.
But, and this is the crucial part, once your RAS spots those opportunities, you still have to take action.
You can't just look at them.
Right. You have to step to the edge of chaos. And this is where the Talent Whisperer incorporates the work of Daniel Coyle, specifically his book, The Talent Code and the REPS method.
Daniel Coyle's work is essential for understanding the actual biology of transformation. Because transformation isn't just a change in attitude, it is a physical, structural change in the brain.
REPS is an acronym, right?
Yes, REPS stands for Reaching, Engagement, Purposefulness, and Strong Feedback. It is the biological process of deep practice.
Let's slow down and explain the biology here because the sources mention this substance called myelin.
Yeah.
Are you saying that practicing something actually physically changes the structure of our brain cells?
Yes,
But,
literally, it changes the physical architecture. Think of your neural pathways like copper electrical wires.
okay, copper wires.
When you learn a new skill or try a new behavior, the electrical signal travels down that bare wire. It's slow, it leaks energy, and it feels incredibly awkward. That is why learning something new is so exhausting.
Like trying to write with your non-dominant hand. It's so frustrating and slow.
Exactly. But when you take action at the edge of chaos and you receive immediate, strong feedback, that's the S in REPS, your brain responds to that struggle by wrapping that specific neural circuit in a fatty white substance called myelin.
It's like wrapping the bare copper wire in rubber insulation.
Precisely. Myelin is a neural insulator. It prevents the electrical signal from leaking out. The more you practice with focused, purposeful intent, the P in REPS, the thicker the myelin sheath gets.
And what does thicker myelin do?
The thicker the myelin, the faster and more precise the electrical signal travels. It can increase the speed of the impulse by up to 100 times.
100 times faster.
Yes. This is the literal biological mechanism of how intentional, difficult, clumsy effort transforms into an effortless, unconscious reflex.
That is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Talent isn't born, it's insulated.
That is a great way to put it.
I want to bring in the anecdote from the text about Joe the skier because it completely crystallized how a whisperer uses this biology and how they guide someone using the Iterative loop.
This is a fantastic story.
The author tells the story of taking his friend Joe, who has only been skiing once in his life, to the top of a very difficult mountain.
A terrible idea for a beginner, usually.
Exactly. The wind is howling, it's near gale force, and the slope is steep and terrifying. Now, the instinct for most people in that situation, and certainly what I would do just to get it over with, would be to point the skis downhill, close my eyes, and try to survive one massive, terrifying, straight run to the bottom.
Which the text brilliantly refers to as firing a cannonball.
Firing a cannonball.
This borrows from Jim Collins's famous business concept of fire bullets, then cannonballs. A cannonball is a massive, high-risk, all-or-nothing, low-feedback gamble.
You put all your powder in one shot.
Right, if you fire a cannonball and miss, you are out of gunpowder. You've blown your resources. Or, in Joe's case, if he attempts a cannonball straight down a black diamond slope with no skills, he doesn't just fail, he snaps his femur.
He ends up in the hospital.
He experiences severe physical trauma, and he probably never skis again.
Right. So the guide, who is acting as the talent whisperer in this scenario, stops Joe from firing the cannonball. Instead, he instructs Joe to do tiny, short, horizontal traverses across the hill.
Just skiing across, not down.
Right. Just ski sideways for 10 feet. Joe does a short traverse, loses his balance, and falls over in the snow. He gets up. The guide gives him immediate, specific feedback. Bend your knees slightly more, lean forward.
Strong feedback.
Joe does another 10-foot traverse. He falls again. Over the course of the afternoon, he takes 100 incredibly short traverses, resulting in 100 falls. These are the bullets.
Exactly. Bullets are low-risk, high-feedback micro-experiments. And what is fascinating here is the unseen biology of what is happening inside Joe's brain on that slope.
Myelination.
Yes. Every single time he falls, he gets strong feedback from the guide and from gravity, that's the S. He is constantly reaching just past his current comfort zone, the R.
And he's definitely engaged because he doesn't want to fall.
Right. Because he is afraid of falling, he is fully engaged, the E. And he has a clear purposefulness for each 10-foot run, the P.
So he's hitting all 4 letters of REPS.
Because the feedback loop is so unbelievably tight, fall, analyze, adjust, try again within 20 seconds. His brain is rapidly laying down thick layers of myelin. He is physically building the neural architecture of balance and edge control.
He is living the Iterative loop. Let's actually map Joe's experience directly onto the Iterative acronym to show how practical this is.
Do it.
T is tackle. He tackles a right-sized challenge, not the whole mountain, just a 10-foot horizontal traverse.
H is hypothesize. He forms a quick plan based on the guide's feedback. If I bend my knees more, I won't tip over backward.
R is reach. He executes the move, reaching into the edge of chaos.
I is inspect. He evaluates the result. He still fell, but maybe he made it 8 feet instead of 5 before falling.
V is value. He analyzes the value of the attempt. Why did it work better? Which is basically a micro version of the 5 whys.
And finally, E is energize. He recovers, takes a breath, integrates the learning, and gets energized for the next 10 feet.
It is the absolute perfect encapsulation of learned resilience. Resilience is not just bouncing back to where you were before you failed. It is using the failure to level up to a higher baseline of capability.
And we have to highlight the crucial role of the whisperer here. The guide provided the container of safety to fail 100 times without dying. He ensured the challenge was a stretch and not a snap.
Stretch versus snap. We absolutely need to define that distinction for the listener because it is the line between growth and trauma.
It is the most vital line a leader or guide must manage. A stretch is when the adversity or the challenge pushes your capacity, forcing growth, adaptation, and myelination.
It's uncomfortable, but manageable.
It is uncomfortable. You might fall 100 times, but it builds profound confidence and meaning because you are progressing. A snap, on the other hand, is when the adversity or the risk completely overwhelms your current capacity.
The cannonball straight down the mountain.
The cannonball is a snap. A snap leads to trauma, feelings of helplessness, physiological panic, and a total retreat from the edge of chaos. The profound, clairsentient skill of the talent whisperer is reading the nervous system of their protege to know exactly where that invisible line is, keeping them constantly in the stretch zone and preventing the snap.
So, if we take a breath and connect the dots of everything we've covered so far, the 5 whys provides the destination. It helps you find the core, why that programs your biological RAS filter.
The compass.
And the TH-RIVE and AIR-EPS loops provide the vehicle. The iterative, bullet-firing micro-steps that build the physical myelin in your brain to get you there safely.
Beautifully summarized. And when a talent whisperer successfully guides someone through this entire crucible, when they help someone navigate the edge of chaos using their own internal compass, a truly magical byproduct occurs.
Which brings us to the culmination of all this work, our final section, Section 4, the ripple effect, spawning new whispers and organizational alignment.
This is where it scales.
So put yourself in the shoes of the protege. You've gone through this deep work. You've uncovered your root meaning. You've fired bullets instead of cannonballs.
Yeah.
You've built your myelin. You survived the edge of chaos. What happens next?
The transition.
The sources make a fascinating argument that experiencing this kind of profound, guided transformation naturally, almost effortlessly, spawns talent whispering skills in the learner. It's contagious.
It is a beautiful organic contagion. Think about the psychology of it. When a person is finally allowed to live authentically, attuned to their own core purpose, and they have experienced the grace of a guide who held a still, safe space for them rather than judging them or forcing them into a mold, their entire worldview shifts.
They stop judging others so harshly.
They start projecting their own unresolved flinch locks onto others. When you learn how to successfully bypass your own saboteurs and listen to your internal allies, you automatically start listening for and speaking to the allies in others.
You become the other voice for someone else.
Exactly. The whisperer initially acts as the other voice for the learner. When the learner's saboteurs are screaming that they are worthless, the whisperer is the calm, grounded other voice saying, "I see your potential. Let's look deeper."
But then the learner takes over.
Over time, through the myelination of the TH-RIVE loop, the learner internalizes that ally voice. They don't need the whisperer holding their hand anymore. They can self-regulate, self-correct, and navigate the edge of chaos autonomously.
And they pass it on.
And because they possess this new, vast capacity for emotional regulation, they naturally begin to offer that same grounded, clairsentient presence to their colleagues, their direct reports, their friends, and their children.
Okay, I see how this works on an individual one-to-one level. The master teaches the apprentice becomes the master. But how in the world does this scale?
Scaling is the hard part.
It's one thing for one person to have an awakening. It's another thing entirely to change the culture of a company with 5,000 employees. You can't just put all 5,000 people on a ski slope or put them through individual therapy.
Right, that's not feasible.
The sources introduce this concept of atomic rituals, to solve this scaling problem, drawing a direct parallel to James Clear's work on atomic habits.
Yes, organizational transformation is notoriously difficult. It fails way more often than it succeeds because you are dealing with a massively complex web of shared behaviors, hidden flinch locks, and unspoken assumptions.
You can't just mandate it.
You cannot mandate culture change. You can't just issue a top-down memo from the CEO that says, starting Monday, everyone will be a talent whisperer and use the 5 whys.
Right, that just triggers 5,000 saboteurs instantly.
Exactly. Instead, the organizational whisperer looks at atomic rituals. An atomic ritual is a small, highly intentional, repeatable group behavior that subtly shifts the environment.
Give me an example of an atomic ritual in a corporate setting.
Let's invent a hypothetical scenario to ground this. Imagine a large software development company. They just experienced a massive server crash that cost the company $1 million.
A total nightmare scenario. High stress, everyone is at the edge of chaos.
Total chaos. Now, the traditional ritual in most companies after a disaster like this is the post-mortem meeting. And usually that meeting is a ritual of blame.
Oh yeah, who broke it? Who is getting fired?
Exactly. The executives sit at the head of the table and demand to know whose fault it was. This instantly triggers systemic flinch locks. Every single person in the room activates their saboteurs.
They hoard information, they point fingers, they cover their tracks.
No learning happens, only defensiveness.
So how does the whisperer use an atomic ritual to change that dynamic?
The whisperer changes the architecture of the meeting itself. It's a small change in behavior. Instead of a post-mortem to assign blame, they introduce a blameless 5 whys ritual.
A blameless 5 whys.
They set a ground rule at the start of the meeting. We are not here to find out who failed. We are here to map how the system failed.
That immediately lowers the temperature in the room.
It sounds simple, but it is an atomic shift in energy. It moves the room from fear to curious exploration. They use the 5 whys on the server crash. By the end of the meeting, instead of firing a junior engineer, they realized the root cause was a lack of psychological safety to report early warning signs.
Because everyone was too scared to speak up.
Exactly. As these small, blameless rituals compound week after week across dozens of meetings, the entire organization slowly develops a collective learned resilience.
The sources refer to this alignment process as interweaving roots, which I think is a beautiful metaphor.
It is.
An individual has their personal causal chain, their deep personal why, and the organization has its own causal chain, its overarching mission, vision, and values. The goal of the organizational whisperer isn't to chop off the individual's root and force them to become a mindless clone of the company. It's about alignment through resonance.
That is a critical distinction for any leader listening. Alignment is not sameness. Sameness is fragile.
Sameness is compliance.
Right. Alignment is resonance. It is finding the harmonic overlap where an individual's deepest personal motivations can find meaningful expression through the execution of the organization's mission.
How does that look in practice?
If an employee's root why is a deep need to foster human connection, and the company builds communication software, there is profound resonance. The roots interweave and strengthen the tree.
But if they don't resonate?
If that same company pivots its business model to creating predatory algorithms that isolate people, the geometry misaligns. The roots choke each other. A true whisperer uses the 5 whys as a constant communication tool to check for, cultivate, and protect this resonance.
And to manage this resonance across a highly diverse group of complex human beings, the whisperer has to be incredibly adaptable in their leadership style. The text breaks down this adaptability into the 4 elements of a whisperer.
This is a great conceptual framework.
And I just love this imagery. It gives us a vocabulary for how to show up for people. First, there is water, the way of nurturing and flow. This is providing deep nourishment, patience, and adaptive support when someone is completely drained.
We all need water sometimes.
Then second, there is fire, the way of ignition and truth. This is being the catalyst for passion, bringing the heat, and having the courage to speak hard, necessary truths when someone is complacent.
The fire to burn away the excuses.
Third is earth, the way of grounding and stability, being the unshakable anchor in a chaotic sea, absorbing the shock when someone falls and fails.
Catching them when they fall off the skis.
Exactly. And finally, air, the way of clarity and freedom, providing the breath of inspiration, taking the high-level view, and bringing the wind of change when things are stagnant.
It is an ancient and perfectly balanced framework. And a true whisperer possesses the clairsentience to read the nervous system of their protege and know exactly which element the moment requires.
Because giving the wrong element could be disastrous.
Absolutely. Sometimes a protege needs Earth. They just failed a massive project, their saboteurs are screaming, and they just need you to hold them steady and ground them. But sometimes they need fire. They are making excuses, they are avoiding the edge of chaos, and they need you to challenge them directly and push them back into the crucible.
And often, this is the hardest part of leadership, they have to hold these opposing elements in tension at the same time. The sources talk about the concept of non-dualism.
Holding the tension.
A whisperer is constantly invited into highly polarized dualistic spaces. The marketing team wants speed, but the engineering team wants quality. The board wants profit, but the employees want purpose. Fear versus trust. A traditional manager panics in this tension and forces a mediocre compromise where everyone loses a little bit.
Lose-lose compromise.
But the whisperer, they don't force a compromise. They hold the tension. They sit in the discomfort of the complexity until a third, entirely new path emerges. They look for the 10% truth in every perspective, as Shirzad Shabbing points out in his work on positive intelligence.
Because a whisperer understands that tension is not the enemy of clarity. Tension is often the birthplace of innovation. The whisperer doesn't resolve the difference for the team, they expand the frame. They use the elements, they use the 5 whys, to elevate the conversation so the team can discover a breakthrough rather than just settling for a watered-down compromise.
What I find so deeply comforting about this entire philosophy is that none of this is a new, trendy management fad invented in Silicon Valley last year.
Not at all.
The text beautifully highlights global archetypes to prove that this concept of the talent whisperer is a universal, ancient human truth. It is how we have always thrived as a species.
It is deeply rooted in the oldest global wisdom traditions. The text explicitly explores the South African concept of Ubuntu, which loosely translates to I am because we are.
I am because we are.
It is the profound recognition that human potential only exists in relationship. And connected to that is the beautiful Zulu greeting Sawubona, which means I see you.
I see you.
And the traditional response is Injikona, which means I am here. A whisperer's primary job, before any coaching or metrics or goals, is to truly, deeply see the person, inviting them to be fully present.
And the text connects it seamlessly to Eastern philosophy as well, specifically the Taoist concept of Wu Wei, or effortless action.
Leading by leaning out.
Exactly. It's the idea of leading by not clinging to control, sensing the timing of the river, yielding rather than forcing, guiding the current, instead of trying to dam it up.
And if you want to bring it into the modern business vernacular, it aligns perfectly with the concepts of the go-giver and servant leadership. The ultimate measure of a talent whisperer's success is not how much power they hold, how many followers they accumulate, or how many quarterly targets they crush.
What is their measure of success?
The measure of their success is how many autonomous, capable leaders they generate. They operate entirely from a place of generativity. Their ultimate goal is what psychologists call symbolic immortality. Distributing patterns of self-belief, resilience, and clairsentient capacity into the minds of others, ensuring that the ripple effect of their presence continues to expand long after they have stepped back into the unseen.
Wow. Okay, we have covered an immense, incredible amount of ground today. From the reticular activating system filtering our biological reality to building literal myelin insulation on the terrifying ski slopes of the edge of chaos, all the way down to ancient Zulu greetings and the elemental forces of nature. Let's take a breath and bring this all together.
If we synthesize the core beating heart of this message for you, the listener, it is this. True transformation, whether it is for yourself, your team, your friends, or your children, isn't about magical thinking. And it certainly isn't about white-knuckling through the pain and forcing rigid compliance. It is a biological and psychological process of unfolding.
It takes discipline.
It requires using disciplined, compassionate curiosity, like the 5 whys, to bypass the defensive saboteurs and find your true internal compass, your root meaning. It requires the immense courage to step to the edge of chaos and take action through micro-steps, firing bullets, not cannonballs, using the Rive loop to metabolize that adversity into myelin and mastery.
And holding that space for others.
Most importantly, it requires cultivating an environment through atomic rituals and nonverbal attunement, where you and those around you finally feel safe enough to drop the armor and grow authentically.
So to you, the learner, who has been with us on this journey today, I want to challenge you. Take a hard look at your own life right now. Look at your current projects, your frustrations, your relationships. Where are you currently trying to force a massive, risky cannonball? when you really should be firing small, iterative, high-feedback bullets?
That's the question.
Where are you aggressively applying pressure and force to fix a problem when you should actually be offering still, safe space to let a flintlock release? And perhaps the most important question, who in your life can you be a talent whisperer for today? Who can you truly see just by holding space, listening to the unspoken currents, and acting as a clear mirror for their untethered potential?
And as we close, I will leave you with a final lingering thought inspired by the absolute depths of these texts. We spend so much of our waking lives trying to fix what we believe is fundamentally broken within us. We view our anxieties, our frustrations, our defensive reactions, and our repeating conflicts as malfunctions. We treat ourselves like broken machines.
We really do.
But what if your recurring struggles aren't malfunctions at all? What if they are just the universe's way of frantically tapping on your shoulder, asking you to stop fixing the surface symptom and start listening to the root meaning? What changes for you tomorrow if you treat every breakdown, every moment of tension, not as a failure to be hidden or ashamed of, but as a perfect mirror reflecting exactly what you need to understand to finally become whole?